waste those energy dollars. A wire or a box in an exterior wall, that's a potential source of air leakage. I'm here behind the washing machine in the laundry room, and I've noticed where the pipe goes through the wall, there's quite a large gap around it. That's a great place to do a little bit of caulking and seal up those leaks. Okay, so I've loaded a tube of latex caulking into my caulking gun. When you're buying a caulking gun, don't buy the cheap one. Get a good one. The cheap ones never work. I use latex for interior use because it's relatively odor free, and you can paint over it afterwards, which is a little better looking. So I'm just going to cut the tip. I'm going to cut it fairly large because we've got quite a large gap. Cut it at a diagonal. Remember, a sharp knife is safer than a dull knife. The thing about caulking is to take your time, fill the gap completely, make sure you get all the way around. And if you're doing an area like this, where it really doesn't matter, don't worry too much about how it looks. As a matter of fact, if you haven't done any caulking before, it's a good idea to start in areas where it won't be seen. That way you can practice. Once you're done with the caulking gun and you've got enough caulking in around the crack, you can just finish that off with either a putty knife or use your finger and a little bit of soapy water. I just thought I'd pull some of the moldings off this window and have a look and see what kind of gap there is behind there between the window itself and the wall. Because the house was built in the 70s, I suspect there's no foam insulation back there, and probably be a good place for air to be coming in and for your energy dollars to be going out. So I'll just use my handy little pry bar. That's something you can use. You can also use a nice big old flat chisel or a screwdriver, but you want to be careful not to damage the woodwork. One thing I should mention as well is that if it's painted casing against a painted wall, you always want to run a knife around the perimeter and cut the line between the two. Otherwise, when you peel the casing off, you're going to be peeling off chips of paint off the wall, and that makes a big mess. The corners of this casing are nailed as well, so I'm going to be really careful about how I pull this off to make sure I don't split the casings. And that's just as I suspected. There's a nice big gap, and there's some insulation in there. They did a decent job for the time, but it's not good enough for today's standards, and it would be a place where you get a cold draft coming in. When I'm doing something like this, I always work slowly and carefully. The reason I do that is that if you damage something, the time that you save by doing things quickly is lost as soon as you have to start fixing something. Now you see, in this case, all the nails came out in the molding. Some people would knock them back out through with the intention of using them to nail the molding back on. I prefer to pull them right through from the back side. That way you don't split the paint or the varnish that's on the casing. It saves a lot of cleanup afterwards. And then again, you just pull the couple of nails that are remaining in the frame, just pull those out with a pair of vice grips or just a pair of pliers. Anything will do for that. I pulled off the moldings on this window, and it looks like a really good spot to use some foam rope. There's a consistent gap, and I've got two sizes, 5/8 and 3/4, and we'll use some in certain areas where it's smaller and the other one in the areas where it's larger. This stuff comes in a handy pack like this. It used to come in great big rolls, but now they've got these smaller sizes for smaller jobs. And I just start at one end, and I'll feed that in. It goes in pretty simply. And you can use it by itself, or you can use it as backing for caulking as well. But when it's compressing like this, it's doing a pretty good job of sealing it up. So I find it helps to kind of roll it in, and you can use any number of blunt objects to persuade it. After I'm done with the foam rope, we'll just caulk a few little cracks, and we'll be ready to put our moldings back on. Later on, I'm going to come back down here and put some of that window plaster on this window. Here I am at the thermostat. This is a manual thermostat which controls the furnace in